David, you've been with the War Resisters League and pacifist actions for a long time. How'd you first get interested?
During the Korean War, I was in Los Angeles at the time, and I wrote the national office here in New York for information. I was a draft resistor in 1950, 51 or something.
Why did you object to the Korean War, or was it all wars at that point?
It was all wars, but it was particularly the Korean War, because I was very young. I was aware of the role the U.S. had played in installing Syngman Rhee, the way in which we had overthrown a democratic, well, maybe not a democratic, but there had been a group of Koreans immediately after World War II, a group of Koreans who may or may not have been communists. It's so long ago we will never know, tried to set up a Korean government, not North or South, just a Korean. And the U.S. military moved very quickly to overthrow that, and we brought in Syngman Rhee, who hadn't been there for 50 years, put him in charge, and accepted the division of North-South. And my politics, I was appalled at the role of the U.S. in China. The U.S. was ferrying Chiang Kai-shek's troops around to fight the Chinese communists. And it wasn't a question of whether you backed the Chinese communists or not. It was a question, this is their business. It wasn't our business. It was clearly a matter for the Chinese to resolve.
Now, you earlier spoke at a panel and talked about Vietnam, and the media, and in books perhaps, has this stereotype that in the day, during Vietnam, protesters were angry at the soldiers, mistreated them, spit on them. And you had some interesting comment about that.
Well, I think along with some of the Vietnam veterans we've worked with, one of whom offered a cash reward to any veteran who would come up and testify they'd been spit on, this was an interesting but categorical lie, a lie out of whole cloth. The anti-war movement had worked very closely with the veterans. The War Resisters League had been one of the last groups to finally sort of give up in the struggle for amnesty when it just finally faded away. We stayed with that issue to the very end.
Amnesty for whom?
For the vets. Amnesty for the men who had gone to Canada. We wanted unconditional amnesty for the guys in Canada, and we wanted an end to bad papers for the Vietnam vets. We worked with them. So this is why I get outraged as I think about this. All during that war, we had been in close contact with the Vietnam veterans. And I don't mean just the War Resisters League, the Trotskyists, the communists, any group you want to name that was active in the anti-Vietnam movement also was active in the struggle to work with and support Vietnam veterans. So the ability of the media to project what is a categorical lie, that American troops were spit on, it is true, and it's a very sad thing, that because the war was deeply unpopular, the veterans who came home from that war did not have the kind of collective civic blessing which was bestowed on veterans from World War II. I don't think people are aware of what troops go through. The men who came home in World War II had done terrible things. They had also killed civilians. They had also raped people. They had also seen their buddies killed. I mean, the war is much less happy, even if you're on the right side. But when they came home from all the horrors they had seen, they had the church to receive them with welcomes, they had parades, they had mayors, they had governors, they had presidents, they were blessed. So all the things they had done that they knew were terrible, the memories they had, the things that they woke up with nightmares about, they could accept a little bit easier. The Vietnam vets came home, and the only people who supported them, ironically, were the anti-war Vietnam workers, but no one else wanted to see those guys.
At least now we have that movie Sir No Sir, which shows the solidarity between protesters and Vietnam soldiers.
Yeah.
Now, getting up to the Iraq War now, how do you see the state of the movement and, in particular, what soldiers are thinking? You spoke on a panel about soldiers and resistance.
I think the soldiers are going through exactly the same thing they went through during the Vietnam War. The one major difference is that we don't have a draft. which would cause much more anti-war activity here on the home front. Also, we have managed to parcel out the war by privatizing it with private contractors, which is new. We did not have that in the Vietnam War. But I think the veterans in Iraq have come back, and they have seen terrible things, worse in some cases than in the Vietnam War. Because in the Vietnam War, while the side I would have said I supported, which was the Hanoi or the PRG, I had no illusions that the bullets they fired didn't hit Americans and kill them. I had no illusions that there weren't some nasty things going on. War is a terrible thing, which is why I'm categorically against all wars. But at least during the Vietnam War, you did not have suicide bombers. You just didn't have them. One or two, but this business of suicide bombing is incredible, and it's something we don't know what to do about. We have no defense. What do you do against people who say, "Go ahead. Not only can you shoot me, I'll blow myself up. I'll make it easier for you. I just want to get close to you first." And so you have vets coming home from what is a very demoralizing situation where both sides are wrong. Their side is wrong, and the other side is doing terrible, terrible things between the Sunnis and the Shiites. So they are coming home really shattered in terms of what has gone on. And if anyone tries to tell them that the insurgents are good people, they really... Vietnam is a different situation because the insurgents, if you were at all political, you could understand the Vietnamese side. If you had any background or could talk to them.
Now, you had said that it's very important that the leftists and anti-war folks don't try to impose a political structure on the vets coming back and who may start to oppose the war. What did you mean by that, and what is Iraq Veterans Against the War doing that you approve of?
I don't mean that I wouldn't talk politics with Vietnam veterans. I'm happy to talk politics if they want to. But what I think is most important, first of all, is to find out how we can support them. What do they need in terms of medical care, in terms of fighting for decent treatment by the Veterans Administration, the VA, proper discharges if they've had bad discharges. They have been through an experience which is deeply horrifying. They are coming back with drug problems, with alcohol problems, as they did during Vietnam. And the last thing they need is a Marxist or a pacifist or a Trotskyist coming up and explaining these things to them. They know what they saw. They need time to recover just from the war. And I don't mean I wouldn't talk politics, but the idea of going into the veterans movement and giving a political line, I'm still bitter, really bitter about the role the Maoists played within the Vietnam movement. That the Vietnam Veterans, which is a very good group, was organized during the Vietnam War, was destroyed because of Maoists. I understand their motivations. They thought they needed a proper anti-imperial understanding, and they destroyed the VAW, the VA, and I've never forgiven them for that. You cannot do that. You need to. What is the help you need? What do you need? What are your problems? Not what is my solution to your problems.
Let's close. What are some of the current projects of the War Resisters League?
Well, one of the projects is working on a GI hotline, just answering questions that veterans have or guys who are serving in Vietnam have. How they can get out, how to process their papers, and of course the ongoing struggle against the militarization of this country, which whether it's in the form of a volunteer army or whether it's in terms of a scandalously privatized corporate structure, really is destroying our democracy.
And if people want to get hold of the War Resisters League, how would they do that?
I don't have the website. I'm sorry.
Well, we'll find it out and put it on.
But the phone number is area code 212-228-0450. 228-0450.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.